You heard it here first. I mean, we don't remember what it was, but you heard it here first. Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, sign up for more support with meeting your needs with your weekly Universal Needs notes at theuniversalneeds.com.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everyone.
So it has been such a nice weekend here. It's weird actually because we're recording on a Monday. We don't normally record on a Monday. Normally
this is like it was Monday.
I'm like, oh God, is it Friday? But we just had a weekend. Like my brain's confused. But it was a nice weekend though. Like we had a really chilled time actually. We had a really nice day yesterday.
Yes.
Went out on the boat for a little bit.
Was that yesterday? No, that was 2 days ago. See? Zero concept of time.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It was 2 days ago. Wow. Yeah, no clue. So Saturday was really nice.
Yes.
Went out, chilled out on the boat, went and played some mini golf.
I had peas with fish and chips for the first time.
So those of you not from the UK, I wanted to have fish and chips. It was a kind of little memorial to a family member for me on Saturday, and we were going to have fish and chips because that's what my family back in the UK were doing. And Serena was going to go and get the fish and chips for us from the grocery store so we can make it when we got back. And I said, oh, you need to get some frozen peas. And the look of horror and disgust on her face. And she was like, what do you mean you're going to get frozen peas? I'm like, because that's what you have with fish and chips. She's like,
no.
Exactly.
No, it is not. It is not.
Actually, technically, you probably should have mushy peas because that's really what we do. I'm not a fan of mushy peas, so I just have regular frozen peas. I actually had to pull up images of it on Google to prove to her that this is how the Brits do fish and chips.
Well, and then I had to challenge her on whether the Brits were correct in how they did fish and chips, and she just kind of looked at me. Where do you think it came from? But
well, I mean, let's go a little further. I mean, let's be honest. Where did it come from? Like, as with most of our food culture things, or not a lot of our food culture things, it really didn't come from us. Like, apparently it came from when London had a docks, and it was kind of a very central area for ships and for commerce, and the Londoners decided to take the fried fish from the Jewish community and the pommes frites, i.e. the fries, from the French community, and put it together and made fish and chips. So it wasn't even a concoction. We nicked it from, I mean, maybe we brought the peas to the party. I mean, that could be it.
That seems legit that you guys brought the pea to the party.
Anyway, we ended up, and the brilliant thing about it is that we were sat there eating dinner, and she was like begrudgingly like, well, this kind of works actually. I'm like,
I was not happy to admit it, but I don't think I'll do it often.
No.
But I may not turn as a high nose up to it the next time somebody says, do you want peas with your fish and chips?
Oh my goodness. So it's been a culture weekend, but yeah, it's kind of weird that it's Monday because we don't normally do this on a Monday. Not that it matters to you listening, although it probably will. It might be Monday where you are because these release on a Monday. So if you're watching or listening as and when it came out, happy Monday. And if not, happy whatever day it is, wherever you are listening and whenever you're listening. Anyway, while we get distracted as we do, today we are talking about something that's really important and something that a lot of the time there's a bit of confusion over. And that is the importance of taking breaks and why not everything we always think of as taking a break is actually taking a break.
Well, and a real break. You may be taking a break from one thing and then switching focus to another.
Something else. Well, and this is actually how this whole conversation started was, I think it was last year, we were having a conversation. I remember that you were...
You're asking me to recall last year.
I mean,
you wanted me to figure out what day it is today.
I was going to say, we can barely recall it was 2 days ago we were on the boat. So, yeah, anyway. I'm pretty sure it was last year sometime. Serena and I were talking, and she had a lot going on, and there was a lot happening in her life. And she was like, but I'm taking regular breaks. Like, I'm in the middle of working, and then I'm doing this. I'm taking a break and doing this. And then she was like, and then then I'll stop, and then I'll take a break and do this. And what she was talking about, generally speaking, was like, oh, I'll take a break from work to go do the dishes, or I'll take a break from work to go do the laundry. And I was like, and I remember having this conversation where I paused, I was like, you know that task switching is not the same as taking a break, right?
Well, shit. I think that probably was one of the
responses to what I said. Yeah. And I remember this kind of like face kind of dawning on her. Like, if you want to see the face, go check it out on YouTube or Patreon, watch the podcast. Yeah. Wait, what? And it was that moment of like, but, oh, really?
I tried to justify it first. I was like, but I'm wrong and you're right. Damn it.
And it's not a wrong or right thing. It's just a hey.
That makes more sense than what I was going to try to regurgitate.
Right. Well, and this is the thing, is that so often, especially because we're busy and we have a lot going on in our lives, that this is what we tend to do, is that we tend to be like, okay, so I'm going to take a break from this thing, and I'm actually going to switch to do this thing. But that's not taking a break. It's just switching from one thing to another. And it's like, yes, we might decide that we're going to switch from a very brain intensive activity to a activity that doesn't require much brain input at all. But that doesn't mean to say that we're actually taking a break. And I remember saying to her, you know, it's okay to just rest, right?
But I have to do this, and 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 I have to do this.
And you know it's okay to just rest, right?
And meet my needs?
Oh, well, that's a thing. Maybe we should do a podcast about that.
We should. Let's talk about that after this podcast. Glad you guys are listening.
Meeting needs. Yeah, it's that thing. And I think the thing is that we are so conditioned into believing that we need to constantly be productive. And it's interesting. So
productive and progressing. Like, yes. I feel like that's like...
Absolutely. Well, a lot of the times that's almost the definition of productive, is you have to be progressing in order for you to be considered productive. And this is not where I thought we were going to go today, but this is how it works on the podcast. This is the thing, is that a lot of the time we are trying to be productive because we're trying to actually get our value need met. And that what we're trying to do is that we're trying to prove that we have value. And this feeling of like, we have to constantly be doing something to prove I'm good enough, to prove I'm worthy, to prove my place, to prove my value, to prove my skill, whatever it is. And we've got so used to doing that the concept of rest, where it feels like we are doing nothing, not true, because we're actually meeting our needs, just saying. But the idea is that we're not doing anything quote unquote productive, but we are, because it's productive to meet your needs. Just saying. I'm having a moment today. I don't know. I'm just going with it. This is the thing, is that we have this thing that we have to be doing something. We have to be contributing something to others. We have to be contributing to something outside of ourselves to be seen as productive. And we have to be seen as productive to be seen as worthy. And if we have to be productive to be seen as worthy, that's the way that we get our value need met. And so often this idea of rest, like actually just taking care of us, stopping and taking care of ourselves, while very productive, because what it's doing is it's building the resources in the tank so that we can, when we decide to do something else, be more productive in that thing. It's not seen as quote unquote valuable, because it's not seen as quote unquote valuable to the rest of the world, when in actual fact, we are demonstrating through that rest that we are worthy of rest, that we are worthy of having our needs met.
And when you think about it, I mean, there's so many times in life that I can think back to times where it's like, no, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And I do that task swishing.
Task swishing?
Task
Swishing?
switching.
I don't know. I think I quite like task switching.
Whatever.
Squishing. Task squishing.
See, now we can't even think of what I just said. We're doing real good.
Whatever it is, I like it. I think this is a new term that might catch on.
Use it.
Yes.
Hashtag squishing, stitching, whatever it is, but it's not switching. Put in your own word.
You heard it here first. I mean, we don't remember what it was, but you heard it here first.
And I think back to the times that I did give myself the actual break and the rest, and how much more productive I was and how much I actually got done and where I was at when I picked up the task. Like, sometimes mind-blowingly, it's
right.
like I could have done this okay if I had just progressed along. But the fact that I stop and rest now, I'm like, damn, I did some shit. Like,
well, and not only that, but you'll probably do it in a quicker time as well. It's like it might have taken you 2 hours to do okay. It's taken you 15 minutes to do amazing because you actually have the resource to do it.
Right. And my brain's not like smoking. It's like actually connecting
and functioning as it's meant to, or as it does. Like, very mindful of like as it's meant to, whether in whichever way your brain functions, yes. Whether you're neurotypical, neurodiverse, or whatever. The other thing that's really important to remember about task switching, especially when it comes to your working life, and I remember this was a big thing that came up for me. I was in a very, very toxic work environment many years ago, where I was being asked to juggle so many different things, and I was actually being asked to do way more than I actually had the capacity to do within the time frame. And I remember I had to go and make a case to my manager as to why I either needed some more resources or I needed less on my plate. Not a very constructive conversation, because even with all the evidence, he basically just said, do more. And I went, I think I'm handing in my resignation. Actually, that's kind of how that conversation went. But I remember that as I was putting together the evidence to take to him to say, look, as a manager, I need your help in prioritizing or resource handling, because it is not physically possible. And the thing about it is that when we are doing one task and we then switch to another task, it takes a while. There is something called switch time, which is the time it takes for our brain to get out of this mode of working, she says, pointing in one direction, realizing that people sometimes are listening just on the audio, to this way of working, she says, pointing to another area of the screen. So it's like there is a time it takes. So we lose time every time we switch tasks. So where I was doing a job where I was constantly like switching tasks left, right, and center, I was losing a lot of my actual hours of my day in that task switching, where I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. And if you're doing one thing, you're kind of in it and your brain's kind of on that track. And then all of a sudden I've got to do, like, say I'm doing something with spreadsheets 1 minute, and the next minute I'm doing something creative using like graphic design tools. Not that's what I was doing at the time, but it is what I could be doing now, like what I do in my day-to-day job now. That is a realistic thing, is that there are different parts of my brain that are required for that different thing. And it takes a while for like the bits of the brain that were functioning to be like, oh, we're not needing it. And then the other ones to go, whoa, oh, our time, like try and get back up to speed again. So every time you do that, you lose time. So the more you task switch, the less effective you actually are, and the less effectively using your time and resources. So not only are you not taking a break, you're actually losing some of that time and resource in that switch taking place.
Well, and I can only imagine too that like normally when we task switch, it's to get out of where we're at. So like you brought up the work situation. Mm-hmm. Towards the end of my last job, I was doing a lot of bill auditing. I was doing.
By the way, congratulations! Somebody's full time on the universal needs now. Woohoo! That's what she means by it. Was like. It's the first time on the podcast that she's not said my other job. It's my last job.
That's my last job. Yes. My previous job.
Full time on the team now. We're loving that. Sorry, I had to make a little moment. Sorry, I've distracted you now.
Yeah, I thought, choo, where are you?
We're talking about task switching.
Oh, yeah. And so I was doing like bill auditing and stuff. And then I'd be like, I need to get out of this space. And then I'd do something like completely different. I'd go into craft mode, but then like that switch, like the more drastic the switch, the longer the time it took me to be able to switch until I got into the groove. And then it's like, okay, I've burned my thumb too many times with the glue gun. Let me go and do this. And it was something completely different. So then my brain had to get out of a completely different state. Like,
and sometimes that can be a good thing, because it's like, okay, I'm maxed out in this kind of brain work, and like when you're doing like a full-time job and you're like, actually now I need to do something different so that part of my brain can get a break, and now I'm going to switch to something else. Like that's okay to do, and it's actually it's a good technique to use to kind of stop yourself from burning out. But if you're switching from this to that to this to that to this to that and back and forth constantly all that time, like it's like ding, it's like the cat's watching tennis. Doing. It's like that whole thing of like the amount of time and energy and resources you're losing by doing that is quite profound.
I'm kind of chuckling to myself in my head right now. I'm like, I always used to really pride myself on being a multitasker,
right?
And I am a proficient multitasker. I can have balls up in the air and know which balls are there, and sometimes it's not always, but I'm like, gosh, what is that doing to my brain? Like sometimes it is necessary, but I used to do it as the norm because
look what I can do. I know, like
pretty much like
look how good I am at all these things I'm juggling, and I'm doing them all like I'm trying to prove myself.
And then
like
what would happen?
Trying
people
to
would
get
be like,
my value need met.
Look at this girl with all of her balls. Let's throw her 10 more. She's
right?
Got it. She's a good multitasker. And then I learned how to juggle from 3 balls to 56 balls, and I'm like, well, not like
some of them are going to drop.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck that shit.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing about it is, it's like, how do we do this? Like, it's like, there's that old saying, work smarter, not harder. And it's like, how do we utilize how we work? And the
80-20 rule.
The ways that we work. Yeah. What's the 20% that's going to take 20% of the effort and create 80% of the result? And actually, what's the way of doing that is sometimes by chunking and focusing time for periods of time on different things. But if you're ping-ponging back and forth, it's like you'll lose it. That's not a smart way of working because of that switch time that happens in the brain. And then when it comes to like other things where it's like, especially when you have a less formal job, maybe where you work at home or you work from home, and it's like, oh, I'm working, but I can see those dishes piling up, and I can see the laundry needs to be done, and I can see that whatever else has to be done around the house, because that's what we see when we're at home. And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to take a break from work to do another form of work, which could be a good way of time managing. But if the reason you're needing a break is because you need rest, and that was the context in which the conversation initially came up, was like, you need to rest. You need a break. And you're like, oh, I take a break regularly, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I'm like, that's not rest. That's just doing more shit. I mean, it's important stuff and it might need to get done, but it's not the same as taking a break and really resting. And we all have this within us, and we all do this. I remember recently we had a very intense project that we were involved with, and we both pushed our capacity on it. I think that's safe to say.
And we were in choice in doing it. We
knew we had time to recover. We knew we could recover afterwards. So we made a choice because of the varying factors at the time to prioritize different needs and then make sure we took the time to meet the need for our rest and energy afterwards. Oh, she says, bouncing off the pop shield. So I remember saying to Serena, I'm like, I have hit the wall. And pretty much for the 2 days after that event, I did not leave bed. I mean, I left bed to go to the bathroom, just to clarify. Like, yes, I did. I basically went from the bed to the bathroom and from the bed to the door to get the food delivery that I then ate in bed. Like, that's pretty much what I did for 2 days.
And Claire doesn't, it's very rare that Claire goes completely down.
Yes.
Like, and this is what, I mean, it was just...
I knew what I needed to do, and I knew what I was going to do to prioritize
and that was
my
nothing.
needs. Yeah, and I did nothing. That's exactly what I did. And there were times where like someone came and visited me during that time, and I remember I was lying there talking to them, but I had my eyes closed. Like, I didn't even open my eyes. I'm like, this is what, and it was someone who's very close to me, and like, so was very supportive to be there, and somebody who understood that. So I didn't have to, that was the only person who would have been allowed in my space at that point. I think there are 2 people who would have been allowed in my space, them and Serena, that's it. So yeah, I was like, I know how depleted I am right now. I've made the choice to do that, and now I'm making the choice to fill the tank back up again. And I remember saying to Serena, if I have the capacity, I will do some work, because that was the key part, the key phrase. If I have the capacity, and there's no way I would have compromised my capacity to do some work. And Serena responded saying,
don't you love it when I feed your own stuff back to you?
It's my favorite thing in the whole world.
Well, because she said that, and we always have a lot of work to do. Like,
oh yeah, there's never not something to do with the universal needs,
right? But coming off the fact that she had been in bed for 2 days, and I appreciated that she wanted to get back to work. I'm like, shouldn't you let your brain rest too?
Well, I remember what I said, like, if I have the capacity, I'll work. And you went, or you could just rest. And I was like, well, shit. Yes, I could. And maybe that's the better use of my time. Like, and again, that like, even in that situation, even though I would have done it in line with my capacity, actually it would have been like, and capacity isn't like an on-off switch. It's not like, oh, I've got capacity. Oh, no, I don't. I've got capacity. No, I don't. It's a facial thing that goes with that. It's kind of fun. Watch it on the video if you aren't already. So it's that, we're in that point where it's like, oh, I've got the capacity to do this, as in I can do this. But actually, sometimes it's like, I want to build more capacity. I want to build more internal resources, because I know that means that when I get back to it, one, I'm not going to drain my capacity quickly. And two, I'm probably going to be more effective than I would do if I did it, which within the capacity, but not comfortably in it, or not in a place where I know I can put out without compromising myself. And going back to that, it's almost like, okay, I haven't got capacity. I've got a bit of capacity. Oh, and I've done something, I'm back down to capacity again. And I've done something, build the capacity. Oh, I've got capacity, I can do something. Oh, I've used the capacity down again. So rather than doing that, it's like, I've got some capacity. Oh, hold on a second. Let's build, we can do a little bit more in the tank. So it's like, I'm going to build the tank to here. And then when I do something, I'm down here. I'm not going back down to zero again.
Well, it kind of, we use, when we talk about capacity a lot of, and just filling your tanks, we use like the gas gauge as kind of, a model, because most people get the concept of you put the gas in and it's a full tank.
Petrol for other countries.
Petrol. I'm Americanizing her. She is.
I'm hanging on to the U's by a thread, guys. I seriously, like, everybody listening from the UK, I'm trying. I really am. But
she fed me peas with my.
I did. I fed her peas with the fish and chips. They weren't mushy, but like, we'll get there. Like, no, we won't. I don't even like mushy peas. We're not going to get there.
And now we're back on the peas. And there goes the fucking choo-choo train again. Where.
Gas tank, petrol tank.
When you fill your car up or your vehicle up with gas or petrol, whatever it is, most of the time, chances are you aren't getting to a quarter of the tank, getting empty, and then filling it back up to a quarter tank, and then letting it empty, and then filling it back up to a quarter tank. The optimal idea is to fill the tank up completely when you get down, hopefully, and
so you can go much longer before you need to fill again.
And the good rule of thumb is don't let your tank get past, I think
quarter tank, half a tank, whatever it is.
My grandfather was like, once a quarter's gone, I'm like, that. But
so I'm going to add something here for us to be aware of in terms of the equity and interconnectedness pieces of the need stuff, is that sometimes it is a privilege to be able to fill the tank, both physically and metaphorically speaking. So sometimes, like, I had the privilege of lying in bed for 2 days. I knew that wasn't going to be detrimental to my health. I knew it wasn't going to be detrimental to my finances. I was going to keep a roof over my head. And so for some people, you don't have the capacity to fill the tank up again. Sometimes you have the capacity to get a little in the tank, then you got to do some more, the tank gets empty, you got to fill the tank. So sometimes that is how it needs to be done. So this is not any kind of criticism or judgment for that, and we are very mindful of that. It is a privilege to be able to fill your gas tank, especially with what's been happening lately in terms of gas prices and petrol prices in the UK and other places in the world. That's a privilege. Like, some people don't have the funds to be able to fill the tank, so they do have to do it quarter of a tank at a time, because that's what they need to get them through to the next point where they get paid again. Okay, now I can fill the tank again, but the tank's nearly empty. It reminds me of, do you remember that movie In Time with Justin Timberlake? I don't know whether you've seen it. It's a phenomenal representation of our life and our system and our social system. And what it is that people have on their arms like a countdown number, and it's like how many minutes they've got, how many seconds, minutes, days, weeks, months, years left of time that they have. And so when that goes down to 0, you perish, you expire immediately. And I think what happened was, I can't remember what the backstory was, but basically everyone looks about the age of 21, but they have these things on their arms that dictate basically when somebody lives and when somebody dies. And so in the poorer, and the world is like separated into these zones, and there are some zones which are like the poorer zones, and there are some zones which are like the richer zones. In the poorer zones, everybody runs everywhere because you have no time to spare. You have to make the most of every single second because everything is literally life and death. And it's like, if you get a pay cut, you might not be able to take the bus. Well, if you can't take the bus, that's time. So time is the currency basically. And it's like, oh God, I've got to run. And there's a scene very early on, and I won't kind of spoil it for anybody who wants to watch it. But this person is meant to get on the bus, and they don't have enough to get on the bus. And 2 people try to run to meet each other. So, because you can swap it over. So I could like put my arm against Serena's and I could give her some of my time. And these 2 people try to meet because the person's going to run out, and they run out before they get to each other. And like, it's that. But then when you go to the richer areas of the world, everybody is taking it slow, and they can do whatever they want because they've got the privilege of all the time they want. And the reality is that these days, time is money, money is time. Like, if you have money, you can afford to have a car, which will get you somewhere in 5 minutes, versus maybe needing to take the bus, which might take 20 minutes, or maybe needing to walk, which might take an hour. I haven't taken a bus in a while, so I'm not sure whether the options I gave there actually worked out. But you get the idea. The same thing, like if you have the money, maybe you can hire a nanny to help, or a babysitter to help with your childcare, so that you don't have to do childcare and working and doing dinner and laundry and all those sorts of things. So there's an inherent privilege that we have in being able to take time to fill the tanks. And it was just that movie, I'm sure we will come back to it on another episode, because it's a really great representation of like how our social system and how it relates to our needs. And that's obviously a direct link. Like, you run out of time, you're gone. But in actual fact, we don't realize how much that actually translates to our living experience and to different people at different levels of privilege and marginalization. So I just wanted to say, in the context of the gas tanks thing, like, we have privilege in being able to fill our gas tank.
Yes.
Both literally being able to fill our gas tank, and actually sometimes in taking the time to do that as well.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not sure if you could, like, I was trying to choose my words very consciously, because I realize that, you know, like I said, optimally, I wish everybody had the same like abilities, and unfortunately that's not the case. But letting yourself get to empty, I mean, so little can be done when we're at empty. And I think that,
so it's like, do whatever we can to fill the tank wherever we can. And we may not have the funds to be able to fill the gas tank, like as in literally fill the gas tank, but sometimes we can take, even if it's just a couple of minutes, to fully, completely rest. And that's the thing, is that like when we're talking about taking a break, obviously in an ideal world, we'd take an hour's break, we'd take half a day off, we'd take a week off and go on vacation. Like, that's in an ideal world. But sometimes it's just as simple as just stopping for 2 minutes and giving yourself a full break.
Close your eyes for 2 minutes and
allow
take
your
a deep breath.
Body to relax. Allow your brain to just idle for a second, sticking with the car analogy apparently, and not have to think about anything. It doesn't mean to say you're wrong for thinking anything, but just, it doesn't have to focus on anything. It doesn't have to focus, your eyes don't have to focus on the screen, all those sorts of things that can be really helpful in terms of taking a break. And I know that you had an experience recently where this came up for you when you recently got COVID, right?
Yeah, I just recovered from another bout of that lovely COVID thing that keeps going around and around.
COVID sucks.
Yeah. Fuck you, COVID. And over the past couple of years of doing this work, I have learned, that filling my tank is important. And
I'm going to pause you a second. Yes, that's how you've learned in the last probably couple of years. How would you have related to that a couple of years ago? Like before you did this work, how would you have related to, I'm sick and I have a bunch of work to do?
I would have done the work.
Yeah, exactly.
Not because I wanted to either. Because expectations of others,
expectations of self.
Even
if the
value.
Expectations weren't there for others. Like,
oh yeah, I'd put it on myself.
Right, absolutely.
Oh yeah, ew.
Yeah.
Like I think back to it's just, sometimes I think back, I'm like, oh, why did I do that to myself? Because this time, I mean, it took me out. It knocked me on my ass. And I was already, as it came on the tail end of us making the choice to, put ourselves out a little bit more. And then I really had to recover. And there was work for this. There's stuff that I wanted to do on my own. And I'm like, no, I mean, my brain could do it right now, but no, it needs to rest too, because I think a lot of times, and this was a real realization during this last process when I was sick, is that we allow our body to be the trigger of, okay, I'm better now. And it's because I'm feeling physically better. And yeah, I can get up to do the things around the house, but my brain was still like, oh, no. I'm like a week behind your body. And
just because you can physically do it doesn't mean to say you don't have that kind of mental cloudiness or tiredness or fatigue that comes with being sick as well. That's another symptom.
And our conditioned ability to push through it and not even realize that we're doing it. And I think that was the big thing for me this time around, was realizing that's a conditioning, that I feel like I have to do this because of this, and this. And that I knew I could push my brain because my body was there. Like when my body's depleted, and there are some times when my brain completely fries and it's incomplete sentence. I mean, I can go completely just like blah, 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 blah.
I can verify this. Like, there are times where she looks at me and she's like, what am I trying to say? Luckily, I know her well enough that I can normally fill in the gaps. There was a cross between the blanks and the gaps.
There you go. Another one. You're here to hear first.
But it's much better if we don't have to, because you're able to actually function fully.
Right? Like, I mean.
Yeah. And it's interesting how so much of the time we have this kind of conditioning around what are the things that we should be doing, what are the things that we shouldn't be doing. And one of the things that comes up, I hear this so much from clients, is oh God, I just wasted the entire day the other day. I just watched Netflix. Or I wasted the entire evening. I just watched Netflix. I'm like, I watch Netflix all the time. It's a really great way. Because the thing is that I have a very active brain.
You don't say.
Yeah. I run my own business along with my business partner, and I'm constantly either creating content. The amount of times we'll be hanging out for the day. I mean, we hung out for several hours on Saturday where we would it was just chill time to hang out together. How many podcast episodes did we were like, oh, we need to do a podcast on that. Oh, we need to do a podcast on that. Make a note. I mean, probably 3 or 4 that day alone.
3 or 4 instances, separate instances within the day. And I feel like each one of those instances, and we're just talking about general life and what's going on. Like, it wasn't a work, we were we're not working. There's no work. And it's like, ooh, and this.
Let's take a note so that when we do work, we actually have something to reference back to. We remember this conversation that we had.
And taking the notes allowed us to completely clear it so we could enjoy in that moment. It's like, no, I don't have to hold on to this now, because if we tried to, if we tried to hold on to all the ideas, we would have lost half of them. And it's like, no, just make a quick note and
I mean, we have about just to give you guys an idea. We have just to give everyone listening an idea. We have about 60 episodes which are already planned out content wise. We probably have maybe another, I want to say 70 to 80 ideas in the pipeline, and that doesn't include also the ones that we get sent as requests from people that on top of that. So we have a lot of ideas about this. And the thing is, because everything in life Everything you do every second of every day meets your needs. We may have said that before. That like even when we're out and about doing things, they're like, oh, actually, that would be a helpful thing to tell other people about and remind them about this thing that relates to needs. Mm-hmm. So yes. Sorry, I'm trying to find my way back on my train now. So like even when we're taking time off, my brain is very active. And so especially when I'm on my own and I'm not having conversation, like I'll be sitting there and I'll be doing something. If I'm just resting and just chilling out and not doing anything, I tend to need to be doing something to occupy my brain, because if I don't give my brain something to do, it goes, oh, we haven't got anything to do. Let's go think about this work thing. Let's go create some content. I can't tell you the amount of times I'm like, I'm going on a retreat for 3 days and I come back with a stack of content. We were meant to be taking time off. I'm like, yeah, my brain didn't get the memo apparently. Because when I'm away, I often will switch off from everything. I switch off from Netflix. I go offline, all that sort of things. And so quite often what I find I end up needing to do is I end up needing to give my brain something to focus on. Now, there's a difference between giving something to focus on and something to work on. Something to focus on is that normally just something to keep it occupied and allow it to relax in a way that it won't if I completely switch off from everything, because at that point it goes looking for something to think about. So, for example, I might read a book. That's one way that I will sometimes give my brain something to do. One of the things I also do is I watch Netflix because it's mindless. My brain doesn't have to think. I mean, admittedly, I might be watching something and I'm like, oh, that's a podcast episode. But then what I do is what Serena just said. I'm like, oh, I'm going to make a note of that in our little notebook, our shared notebook that's about podcast ideas. I put it in there and I can let it go out of my brain. And then something else might come up. Oh, I'm going to put it in there. And then my brain gets a break. It gets to rest. It doesn't think about anything of the things it would normally be thinking about every other day. It's like so many people are like, oh God, I wasted so much time. I was on Netflix. I'm like, that's not a waste of time if it's meeting your needs. If it's a distraction or an avoidance, that's something entirely different.
I also want to make a comment on the Netflix thing.
Go right ahead.
This was a realization that I think I probably had before, mm-hmm. but I didn't say it out loud until this, like a week ago. Yeah. And I had I love documentaries, but mm-hmm. we do documentaries a lot to do like shadow work, to really kind of find out about the different things that we haven't had the lived experience.
Right, absolutely.
So I've realized documentaries are very rarely a time for me to relax because mm-hmm. I'm trying to figure things out. And that was something that I could easily identify with. Like when I put on a documentary, I'm doing it to learn. Right. Like that's the purpose of me watching it.
Absolutely.
Since college, I love the murdery,
like
true crime type of things. And I get into it and it fascinates me and all the different elements. And I got into a point where I can, like, I'll watch one and I'll be like, oh, wow, that was really interesting. And then I go down a rabbit hole. I'm like, let me find all of the murders. Like, and I know it sounds...
It's like my worst nightmare. I'm like,
I talked to her about that. She's like, oh, we're talking about murdery things again.
Yeah,
great.
I watched Encanto last night. That's my kind of thing. Like, let's just switch off. Like, it's a little different. Like, just saying.
But I used to think of that as my way to relax. Like I used to binge watch SVU mm-hmm. and then I'd be wondering why I'm like anxious and my mind is going and it's like I'm a little bit more sensitive and it not thinking of the fact like that, like me binge watching murder shows in shows that have a very heavy and triggering content.
And also a very like intellectually engaging subject matter. Like it's getting you to think in different ways, which can be what you're looking for. But
if you're doing it like when I'm binge watching, when I have enough time to binge watch something, I'm usually
needing to rest.
Needing to rest. I need to watch. For a while it was trash TV, and then the trash TV was making me more anxious. I was like, actually,
she saw all the needs in it.
Oh God, yeah, because then now it's. Yeah. I mean, I think I realized it before because I was a Jersey Shore girl. I loved it, and then it was like, oh wow, like the yelling's getting to me, like just the little things, and I'm like, I realized I was being energetically triggered by it, and I'm like, oh, I don't really feel as good watching this anymore. Mm-hmm. And then I learned the need stuff, and I have a hard time with a lot of reality shows, but.
I still watch them, but again, I watch it from a different point of view. I watch it from that, okay, this is interesting to kind of see how people are meeting their needs through these different dynamics.
But it was interesting. I mean, years of doing that, because I thought that was me relaxing. And it's like, oh, I'm enjoying this. And it's like, yeah, but you're not giving your brain a rest.
Right.
Like, because if you're watching, I mean, those shows are made to have a reaction. Like you're supposed, you're supposed to think about it. Like,
right. Yeah, absolutely. And now I know you like watch a lot of like cartoons and stuff like that as a way of like switching off. So you can fully switch off.
Yeah. I mean, that's, if you look at our streaming service, there's a lot of heavy stuff.
Recommended for you is an interesting look at her place. I'm going to be honest.
It really is. It's like, ooh.
Okay.
It's kind of like my music taste.
Right.
All over the place. But there is a lot of cartoons in there. And it's like, you are a 40-year-old woman. What are you doing watching this as the constant? It's like,
I'm pausing you right there. Because that's one of the issues that we have in our culture. You're a certain age, so you shouldn't watch this stuff. And it's like, no, if that meets your needs, then it doesn't matter what age you are. Like, we all have an inner child. Like my inner child freaking loved the gummy bears. Like,
gummy bears bouncing here and there and everywhere.
Yeah. We'll stop there because otherwise we will go off on a tangent. Like that sort of thing. Like my inner child loved that stuff. To the extent where I remember years ago, we found like all the old like TV themes from like when we were kids, and I was in the car with my sister and brother-in-law, and I was like, oh my god, this one, and then we'd all sing along, and then like my sister used to say the issue with me having the control of the music in the car was that she never got to listen to any of the songs all the way through, because I'd find another one I'd get excited about, like, oh, what about this one and everything. But it's like even just the music, I got excited because like that part of me loved that. That part of me still exists within me. I didn't go, okay, I'm now only adult and that part of me does not exist. Although some people might try to pretend that's true. Like we all have these different parts inside of us. And it's like, who cares? Who cares if you're watching cartoons? Like if it works for you and it meets your needs, it doesn't matter what age you are, right? It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter where you sit on any kind of spectrum. It matters that it is meeting your needs. And as long as you are not harming yourself or anybody else, that's the deciding factor. Like if it's harming you or it's harming somebody else, that's a question to revisit and decide maybe to find something else. If it's not harming you or anybody else, go fucking do it. That's all I got to say. Sorry, I know I jumped in the middle of your
I appreciate that you did, because I mean that is somebody else's view saying, no, you shouldn't be meeting your needs in that way. Fuck you. Yeah. Who are you to tell me how to meet my needs?
Absolutely. And it's
we're gonna do an episode on that very soon, because I mean,
it happens a lot. And the thing about it is that as I said, like the things that I watch to enjoy, Serena's like, oh my God, you watch that? And I'm like, yeah, like I find it interesting, and it engages my brain in a way that in the times I'm watching that's what I'm doing. And she's like, I watch this thing. I'm like, you watch what? I'm like, okay, but that's cool. That's the whole thing. Like, it's not like a judgment of like, oh, Serena's judging what I'm watching or I'm judging. It's us saying, oh God, that wouldn't be something that would meet my needs to watch.
And that could be the surprise of it. I mean, we were talking about a show the other day, and she was like, oh, have you seen this show? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I love it for this reason. I'm like, oh, cool. I put it on for 5 minutes and I couldn't get through it because I was about to jump through the TV. Like, and it was just, and there wasn't like in the energy of not judging. You can like be, as Claire said, oh, that doesn't resonate with me, but I'm glad you have something that resonates with you.
And that's the good thing about the relationship between the two of us. Like the reaction that we give sometimes is like it's like the peas with the fish and chips. Like some people would have felt judged by that. And the truth is, like, I'm like, that's what we do. And I also know that, and that's the thing, is like, it's a silly example, but I know that Serena's not judging me. She's just going, wait, what? Oh, that's not something that would work for me. I'm surprised it works for you because it wouldn't work for me. But I also know that what works for me doesn't work for you, and like vice versa. And that's the beauty of our relationship, is that we've had those conversations. We know each other well enough to know there's nothing of that in it. But in actual fact, what it is, us going, oh, I I didn't know that about you. Well, that's kind of interesting.
Well, and sometimes you find, like, through discussions like that, there have been ways that Claire meets her needs, and I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. Actually, I think that would feel good for me too. And I get these new ideas that I never would have thought of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so quick for us to kind of judge that. It's like, oh, that's like you're doing it how? Which kind of feels like this like judgment. And often in those situations it can be. It's like this superiority thing. It's like, oh God, I wouldn't do it that way. I do it this way and my way is better kind of thing.
I'm going to get my, this just came into my head, but it's like, oh, I'm going to get my nails done. And having somebody be like, oh, I'm going to paint my nails. Well, why don't you just go and get them done?
Yeah.
Like,
my way of doing it is better than your way. Like, actually, like for a long time, I never used to get my nails done anywhere else because I get a bit of a reaction to a lot of the polishes that get used. Now, these days, I actually take my own polishes with me and say, hey, could you use this? But like for the longest time, that was a thing. So it's like, yes, that might work for you, but that doesn't work for me. And that's one of the things is that when we kind of come into that superiority place of like, oh, I know better, it cuts us off from listening to somebody else and being like, oh, that could work. Oh, it doesn't really work for me like this. Oh, I wonder if I did it this way. Like, how could I tweak that to find another way of doing things that would work for me? And this is kind of interesting because we've kind of gone a little off track from where we started. But I think that the important thing about all of this is that we need to find out, and the thing that kind of tying this all back together again, like what we've just been talking about and what we were talking about at the beginning, is like finding the things that are taking a break for you. Finding the things that work for you, that give your body a break, that give your brain a break, that give your heart a break, that give your energy a break. Like the things that really, and like listening to like, what is it that I'm needing right now? Actually, I need rest, and I need rest. Every part of me needs rest, rather than actually I'll rest this part, but this part's going to be doing some stuff. Or I'm going to rest this part and that part's going to be doing some stuff.
And not passing judgment on yourself
Right.
for what you need. And like, if it is rest, like being like, okay, like give yourself the gratitude for listening to yourself that you need rest.
And give yourself permission to meet your needs. Because that's the thing. We've talked about this in the past. Needs aren't nice tos, get tos. It would be nice ifs. They're musts. And so that judgment normally comes because we see it as an indulgence, and we see rest as an indulgence. So we do everything possible to avoid rest, which is why we then get into the task switch. It's like, oh, I can't, like, I shouldn't just rest, but I could do this. That's different. And that's less energy than this. So that's better. Like, well, yeah, you might be losing energy at a lower rate, but you're not building energy by doing that. And that's often what we're seeking in those moments. What we want to do is like figure out what are the things that we need to build our energy and build our resources and build our needs at that point. And sometimes that's what rest is. And so if you catch yourself going, oh God, I couldn't possibly take a rest, it's just to kind of catch yourself and go, actually, do I need rest right now? Because often when you like frame it that I need this versus I'd like this, or it would be nice if I did this, it changes how we feel about it. And that's our way to kind of give ourselves permission to truly take a break rather than just jump to the next task on our list.
On that topic.
Yes.
Fuck. Why do I do it to myself too? They're just gone. Like,
Bye.
I felt, not judging yourself. Like, for a while, like, I didn't identify with the fact that sometimes taking a shower is just taking a shower. Like, sometimes I just hate taking a shower because it means that the mental obligation to me is to then do my hair, to do all the things. But like sometimes what I need is to just wash off everything, the energy, and having that be something that I'm doing for myself. And like, I think it was actually you that got me to thinking, like, you know, she's like, no, I need to go home. I need to be in water. I want to wash away everything. And it was I would have never thought of that as a way to meet my needs. Like, and that's not just a need for me. That's usually a ding, 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 where I'm meeting multiple needs. When I go in with the intent, like, I'm going to wash everything. I'm going to just relax my mind. I'm going to close my eyes and
Really clear everything.
And if I, at the beginning, had been like, well, that's a stupid way to meet your needs. Like, you have to shower because then you'll be dirty and stinky. And it's like...
Well, and it's interesting, like, this is a good example because for somebody else, they may need just to step into the shower. They don't need to clean themselves, because it's not that they don't need to clean themselves, but that's what they've got the capacity for at that point in time. But being in the shower meets the needs more than it does to not. So it's like figuring out the way of these. And most people would think, well, why would you get in the shower and not wash? Because that's the point of taking the shower, isn't it? It's like, well, actually, sometimes the shower can just be a way of, like, they often talk about it for people with depression. Like, if you have depression, sometimes actually you don't have the capacity to wash. But they say take a shower over taking a bath, because it's moving things, it's moving the energy a little bit. And sometimes you don't have the capacity to wash, you just step under the shower, and just being under the water can help. And like, most people wouldn't think of that as a way of meeting needs, but sometimes that's exactly what it is. It's a way of meeting our needs. And it's like, the more open we can be to these kind of different ideas from different places, the more options we're going to get for different ideas that we could maybe use ourselves. So I think that's probably it for today. Anything else that you want to add to the mix?
Not if you want me to stay on any sort of a track.
I'm almost tempted.
Don't invite that in now.
I'm almost tempted, because I know where that could lead.
You know where that could lead.
It's going to be fun. We'll do that at some point. We'll just come in. We'll have no clue what we're going to talk about one day, and just see where we end up. God, that could be kind of fun. I like the idea of doing that. Anyway. For today, thank you for joining us.
I'm going to wear a conductor hat during that one.
Sorry?
I'm going to wear a conductor hat during that one, so I can at least feel like I somewhat know where my train is.
The train will be anywhere it needs to be that day. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Remember to stay safe, to continue meeting your needs, and we will see you next time. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard
and would like to see some of Serena's awesome facial expressions,
check out the video podcast on YouTube.
And remember, task switching is not the same thing as taking a break.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.